All right, so I'm gonna go over my wedding process and how I color grade and edit films. This is a video that I got back from a different editor, and now it's coming to the part where I want to color grade everything. If you notice, everything is on its own track. So we have all the B-roll clips on the first track. If I go down here, then I have this camera's a FX3. If you scroll all the way over, they should be all lined up depending on what angle and where they came from. So that way when I edit per track, it's all together. So the very first thing that I'll do is I'm gonna go mute all the different tracks that I'm not working on, so that way I just have the one track. So then when I jump over to the color clip, you'll see I'll have all these tracks here. And the reason why I do this is so that way I can put these all in a group. And so these are all in a group, so that way when I edit on a group level, they all update at the same time. So we're gonna go here. So eventually you take all these clips and you put them in a group, and then you go to pre-clip group. So that way you're editing all these clips together. If you switch this to clip, that means I'm just editing this individual clip, but I want to edit all these clips together. Now I have a preset that I made, so when I drop this on, there's nothing that's done to this except for the LUT that I've added. That's the only thing that's done. Other than that, everything is just basic. So what you want to start with is you have your noise reduction, your white balance, your typical balancing, adjusting everything, your LUTs. This is going to be color warp, so if you really want to dramatically change any colors, this is where you do that, and then your sharpening. And so that's all I do on a per clip basis. So the very first thing that I'm going to do to this clip is I am going to go to the white balance, select the white balance, cool it off just a little bit. One thing that I notice a lot of people do is they have blown highlights, and the way that I found to get a little bit more dynamic range out of my shots is I'm gonna go to here to the highlights, and I'm gonna drop these highlights down, and you can recover the information that is in them back. And then I'm gonna go to my gain, and I'm gonna pop up my gain just a little bit. If I need to, I'll do a vignette later on around them. So that's what I'm gonna do for my balance. And then probably under here we might add another node, and then we'll label this saturation. So if we want to bump up the saturation at all, you can either do it in color boost. So I'm just gonna bump it up just a touch. Balance, so then I usually go over my gamma, and I usually bring my gamma down, and it just adds a little bit more contrast on this clip, and that looks good right there. Add a little bit of contrast, and I'll pivot it up. It is a little dark, so it's a really push and pull to get the most out of it. Lift, if I want true blacks, I'll go into here and I'll select her hair. That's kind of the closest thing to black. Now it went way dark, but at least I got a solid black color, and then what I can do is then back this off to see what I want. So here's before, and so it totally changes the look of it to try to get, it's trying to get that straight black. I'll usually go over to my shadows, and I'll usually pop them up just a little bit. I like a lot of, raised blacks. So for me, this is pretty good. I could give or take this lift, a little too much for me. So let's go over the white balance. Let's cool this down just a tad. Let's see where we're at for white balance. Let's see what I want us to pick. Yeah, I like something like that. So from here, maybe go to sharpen real quick, just to add a little bit of sharpening at the end. So from there to there. So that's a quick look of what I want to do. Then from there, I'll usually go to here. I'll add the color warper. Click on this. I want to add a little bit more saturation to his jacket. Let's bring the luminance down just a little bit. Just making his jacket pop just a little bit. I think that all looks good. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go over here to, for me, and I shoot on Sony, and for me, the trees are a little bit too distracting in a lot of the videos, a little bit too green for me. So I'll just take down that green just a hair. So not a lot, but it just gives it a little bit of pop. And now you'll notice every one of these clips now has that same look applied to it. Then we can go over here. You can see kind of the same thing over here. Let's add a, I'll label it. You want to be sure to label, so then that way you can go back and decide, you know, which node and what you did, instead of, you know, trying to have to guess. Same thing with his jacket here. Let's go here. We're going to add a warper. Select his jacket. Add a little bit of saturation. Greens look pretty good here. That's kind of where I'd leave this clip. Let's go here. We got a bunch of them speaking. So we're going to go here into a new group. Now, if I edit this, it's on the clip. We want to edit the group. Switch over to the group and go to my still library. So essentially all we have is the LUT that's being added, since we're using the same LUT on every single one. Let me reset this. So this particular one was a little too green for me, so I took some green out of it. Let's go to the color warper. So on this, let's do some white balance first. Add some saturation. Go to my balance. See some highlights. Bring the highlights down a little bit. Crank this up. And sometimes what I like to do is go to effects. So under this last node, I just like to add the false color. So that way I can see where everything is coming in at on my skin tones to make sure that everything is properly exposed. So sometimes I'll throw that on there just to kind of see where I'm at as far as everything goes. So this looks pretty good. I might, on this clip, add a gradient to bring down these harsh highlights that are over here on his face. But I'll do that on an individual level, maybe not a clip level, but we'll just do it on here so you can see what that looks like. Go here. Let's do a gradient. Something like this. So we got going on. Something like that. Yeah, so just brings it down just a little bit. Or what I can do is do a vignette around her since she's kind of the focus. But, you know, that looks pretty good for me. Going to balance. You know, something like that. That's about good for this clip. I'm just trying to get these in the ballpark for the time being. And then I'll fine tune and color match everything together. So now let's go back to all our clips. So I'm going to switch back over here. Let's turn on our main. So essentially the very top is where all our B-roll is going to live. And this is where I don't really do groups for these because every shot is so different. But this looks like a good hero image. So we're going to start here. Let's see what we can do with this. So I'm not going to group these. That's our balance. Let's also get our saturation in here. I'm going to start with the white balance on this one. Dress is usually a really, really good one to white balance off of. Not all the time, but usually a good one. So let's go to our balance. And what I'm going to do on this is I'm going to try to pull a lot of those highlights down. And then let's bump up our gain a little bit from there. Let's add a little contrast. And then actually with our white balance, I'm probably going to warm this up a little bit. Let's bring... Let's go to saturation. I'm actually going to bring up the saturation quite a bit, and then I'll pull it back here in a little bit, kind of see what I'm doing. So usually with field shots, I like to go to get the grass. Go grab these greens. Balance, probably bring down this just a hair. Probably back this off just a little bit. And for this, I'll probably do an outside node. So as far as my balance goes, probably bring this up, probably right in there. And this outside node, then I'll bring it back down. There we go. Now go back to my saturation. Something there. don't know, something like that. That's usually what I'll do. I'll play with this a little bit more, depending on taste, but that's a good starting DNA for what I'd like to see on something like that. And then from there, you know, depending on how it looks, you know, you can copy and paste it in some of these. And then turn different things off depending on, you know, what you're doing. So it's a good look DNA to start, and then you can save it, you know, save it and then redo it. So usually when it comes to here, you have the B-roll. So this is where you're going to spend most of your time doing a lot of the editing, because a lot of the colors and a lot of the stuff is going to be vastly different versus when working on these clips. Let's see. Whoops. You know, when you get to this level, then that way, you know, this particular one is going to be from the bride's angle. So I'll grab, I'll grab these clips here. Go in here into new group. Label it bride, ceremony. And then I would almost go back to the other look that we created from the other side, because it's going to be pretty close. So let's go turn that on. Let's see if we got it here. Go grab that still, and then we can turn these off. Go back, so that way, just turning them off, it makes it easy to see the clips and then just select everything that we need. We'll go here, and then what you want to do is make sure that you don't want to drop it on this clip, you want to drop it on the group, so that way it affects all the clips. Drop this on here. And now we can go from there. So now we can grab these from the other one, and now we can try color matching those two together. So you can see there's quite a big difference between the two. And so that way we need to do some matching between those two shots to make sure they're the same. This one probably has a little bit too much saturation, too dark. We need to do some adjusting. But essentially, that's the way that I like to color grade my clips. All my projects come in like this. B-roll is usually up here. Usually when you're down here and you're not using clips, we like to disable it. So if this is enabled all up here, so essentially all these clips here should be disabled. So then that way, when you go to the color grading, you're only seeing the clip that you want to be working on. That's why you see all these disabled, and that's why you see all the audio tracks disabled. So that way, if I want to switch to a different audio track, I can do that, and I can just switch between, and everything's there. It's not like I have to go find it. If you guys have any questions, let me know, but that's essentially how I like to go through and color grade all the footage in my wedding videos.